In news abroad, Taiwan's biggest earthquake in at least 25 years killed 7, injuring more than 700, with 77 trapped in tunnels and collapsed buildings. The quake also sparked a tsunami warning for southern Japan and the Philippines that was later lifted. At least 26 buildings have collapsed, more than a half Hualien, with about 20 people trapped and rescue work ongoing. The quake had a depth of 15.5 kilometers just off the eastern coast of Taiwan. Aftershocks could still be felt in the capital of Taipei, with more than 25 aftershocks registered. Electricity operator Taipower says more than 87,000 households are still without power, adding that the country's 2 nuclear power stations were not affected. Taiwan's high-speed rail operator said no damage or injuries were reported on its trains, but noted that the trains will be delayed while it carries out the inspections. For more on this, we are joined live by SABC News correspondent Chris Gilbert in Tokyo. Good afternoon, Chris. Take us through what the latest is, particularly with regard to getting people who are trapped. Has there been any more progress that you can share with us?
Oh, good evening from Tokyo. Look, the officials in Taiwan at the moment doing what only officials can do this soon after a disaster of this magnitude, which is try and get their head around the extent of the damage. We saw this in Japan following an earthquake on New Year's Day. Who needs help the most? Who needs aid the most? How to get it to them, because bridges are no longer, structurally safe. Tunnels have been blocked off. We know at least 60 people are trapped in tunnels around the affected areas, and roads and major highways have been cut off. In fact, the Hualien, the main city that has been affected by this earthquake, is now thought to only be reachable by sea and by boat. And so officials are right now working on the logistics, kind of a double problem of figuring out how bad the situation is. And to do that, they're talking to local officials and communicating with those on the ground. But then also, as you mentioned, how to save lives and how to get into broken buildings. We have seen images and got reports of people who have been using ladders to, escape the upper stories of some buildings which have completely collapsed onto their side. But of course, the backdrop to all of this is the ongoing threat of aftershocks as well, which is, also hampering the officials' efforts.
Yeah, I can imagine just how much fear there is among the Taiwanese people themselves. You're walking around the street and you don't know whether another tremor will hit again. Have you been able at all to speak to residents and just general people to get their sense of how they feel?
Yeah, the reports are coming in of the fear that people in Taiwan are feeling, and also here in Japan, in the far reaches of the country, in Okinawa, with the tsunami alerts that hit the country early this morning, with sirens going off. Thankfully, all was well in that situation and nobody was hurt, and thoughts quickly turned back to Taiwan. But I can tell you that I personally have been in very large earthquakes around the world, and, following that the danger has not passed. You can no longer trust the ground under your feet. The earthquakes are come that often. Once every minute. We've had at least 66 above magnitude 4 in Taiwan already. They are expecting, up to a week of up to magnitude 7 earthquakes to come. And the concern that comes along with that as well is not just the fear or the hampering of efforts, but that buildings which have already had their structural integrity compromised, but maybe not collapsed, or maybe stay completely sound and standing, they can be weakened by earthquakes like this, and then they can collapse in following aftershocks. So authorities really are urging vigilance from locals that the danger has not yet passed.
Yeah, judging by the visuals that I see on the screen there, Chris, the reconstruction is going to take a long while because most of the buildings obviously have been compromised a lot. Is it too early for us to have an idea of where the government is thinking about where to start when it comes to reconstruction post this tsunami?
To be perfectly frank, I think it is too early, and that is because the focus of the president of Taiwan, of local officials, is very rightly at the moment on saving lives. Of course, there is a moment for reconstruction and rebuilding and moving on, but the first 24 to 48 hour period, which we're still very well in, is absolutely crucial for saving lives, for making sure that people trapped in rubble are being searched for, because we have seen absolute miracles and earthquakes in Turkey, in Morocco, here in Japan, just over the last 12 months or so, of people who have lasted for hundreds of hours, people who are quite elderly, lasting in rubble. And so that's where the focus is at the moment. But I can say that the government says that in terms of repairing the infrastructure that's needed, the roads and the bridges, there is no scale at the moment or no measurement of how long that will take. They are not optimistic, they say. And so they are looking to train, and they are looking to see in the coming days to try and get aid and emergency supplies into the vulnerable and those in need.
Yep. Just before I let you go, has there been any helpers coming through, aid workers? You did mention aid workers, but normally with earthquakes, you do find that other countries do send help. But have you heard anything of that sort at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Japan immediately sent a message following the earthquake saying that it was ready to support. It hasn't specified yet exactly how, but Japan is very, I guess it has a reputation for having very skilled emergency workers, earthquake response workers who have helped out in earthquakes all around the world, including in Turkey, including in Taiwan, including in China and New Zealand. And so it is to be expected that assistance will be coming. China, of course, has offered its assistance as well. It will be interesting to see how this plays out further, because it is not really in the foreground, but there is a political context here about the complications around how certain countries feel about other countries' relations with Taiwan. And it might be interesting to see how that plays out in the assistance and the aid and the jostling potentially that comes into that. But it's still early days, and a number of countries are vowing support.
Chris, thank you so much for the update. I've been chatting to Chris Gilbert. He's our correspondent taking us through what's been happening in Taiwan after that earthquake hit in that country.